Hi, it's Dr. Rimka, and this is April 7th, 2020, and we're in some very interesting times here. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm pretty new to YouTube. See, I almost said Facebook. I'm very comfortable on Facebook. Many of you may have seen me there. I am now going to start doing guys, I said it again. I'm going to start doing YouTube. One, I'm new to YouTube, so bear with me in the beginning here. Two, I'm new to using an app called StreamYard. So I think it's going to go well, but if we have some tech glitches, I apologize in advance. I'm going to do the best I can. But I've been getting a lot of inquiries. Right now, we're dealing with the coronavirus global situation, which has been classified as a pandemic. And I've been asked some questions from patients, friends, and students in some of my online courses. I teach group courses. And rather, when I get asked a lot of questions, the same question, I just rather make a video because I can answer a lot faster. I put a little, bit of time and thought into this because I wanted to bring something maybe different than was being regurgitated over and over and over again. I will say this as a caveat. It's April 7th, and I'm going to give you right now kind of my current understanding of COVID-19 and what to kind of do about it from a different perspective than maybe you haven't heard before. I'll preface it with this, all right? This is coming from my perspective. I've been in clinical practice for 20 years doing functional medicine. I come from a holistic paradigm. I come from a way of looking at things. How do you treat a root cause without toxic drugs or surgery? How can we avoid that? That is the lens from which I come after things. I am a doctor of chiropractic that got specialized in mental health disorders and autism due to personal family issues and friends and things, and just my passion, and from history of working in the mental health field. And I'm also a board certified neurofeedback therapist. So I record brain imaging and I look at brain structure and function, and I specialize in that. So I do a lot of things in the mental health realm. So this has obviously affected my patient base a lot because it's caused a lot of increased stress, anxiety, and depression, even paranoid thinking and things like that. So I have to stay on top of it. I am not an infectious disease expert, and I do not want to pretend to be. I'm not a virologist. I'm not pretending to be, but I'm going to bring you maybe something you are not hearing currently in the news and what's being talked about by even all my other holistic practitioners out there. They're kind of saying some of the same things, and I'm like, well, let's just look at it. So I'm using StreamYard, and I can put some banners in. I've set some things up, so bear with me as I learn this new system. So I'm going to tell you what I think, and from my current understanding of health, wellness, physiology, and seeing the optimized human being as a primary electrical physical manifestation of source frequency. Now that sounded kind of weird and woo-woo, but this is an overview coming from understanding I record electricity in people's brains. I record you as an electrical being. I believe you are a primary electrical being, and chemistry is made to communicate this electrical information. All right. So I've been asked, what do I think is the difference? For me, so far, knowing that about me, I think the number one differentiation I'm seeing is something called redox charge. All right. So let me say this before I get into that, and I'm going to talk about charge a little bit. This will probably be a long YouTube, and I may cut it up. If you want to just get to getting to it, I'll throw it on the ticker down there. You can just go to that link to get an action plan. It's going to summarize everything I'm going to say here and give you an idea of how do you stay strong? How do you stay bulletproof? How do you build a strong immune system for anything? It doesn't matter if it's coronavirus, if it's a flu, if it's a bacteria, if it's MRSA, if it's flesh-eating bacteria, the body does the same thing. And if you get it strong, what comes at you doesn't matter that much. Now, there's a lot of things that are going into what's making you weak that maybe you don't understand. So I'm going to explain a little bit of those things that are outside of stop eating donuts and getting drunk every night. I think you know you shouldn't do that. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that no one's talking about. How many times can you hear about vitamin C and zinc? I think you might probably have heard about it enough at this point, but I can answer questions about that if you'd like. All right. So knowing that, there's the action plan. You can go there and you can get this information and right away, and just don't even listen to me. I appreciate you watching. If you like it though, go ahead and share it, tell your friends. All right. So the number one differentiation I see when people would say, I think it's redox charge. I'm going to explain what that means. But it's the thing that's differentiating somebody who sees mild symptoms compared to somebody who is going to see severe symptoms, right? It's the difference between even death, right? It's called redox potential. Basically, redox potential means the amount of charge your cells and your body can create and maintain. Losing your charge is like having a dead battery inside your car. You can either charge it and get it going again. Sometimes the battery gets so bad, you can't even recharge it and you have to replace it. That's real bad if it's your body, okay? A secondary influence that I think determines outcomes outside of these uncontrollable factors predicting your redox potential, such as your age, right? Redox potential, the younger you are, the stronger your redox potential is that you just naturally create. You can't really control that, right? You're 10 years old or you're 75 years old right now. The other thing though, a secondary influence that I think is really important is the amount of time someone spends in living in vitalistic thinking versus mechanistic thinking. So what does that mean? I'm going to spend a little time on this because I think it's really, really important. I will do a disclaimer. I'm a vitalist. I've been so for well over 2 decades, right? A primary premise for a vitalist, here we go, is how we look at it is a symptom is not the disease. The symptom is the therapy to heal the disease. So let's look at what that would look like. Let's break it down between a vitalistic way of thinking versus a mechanistic way of thinking. A vitalist versus a mechanistic way of thinking, of looking at disease, they're very different processes. A vitalist would say that a mechanist confuses the cure for the disease. A vitalist would say that the mechanistic approach of symptom chasing and symptom suppression not only does not heal anything, it actually is making the disease process much worse by stopping the body's intelligent therapeutic cure that's already built inside. A vitalist would also say that the mechanist is confused by classifying a healing response as the disease. A vitalist would say that the mechanistic treatment is even more toxic and dangerous than the disease itself. Here's what a vitalist would say. Let me find this other banner for you. There you go. Here's what the vitalist would end up saying. This is how we look at it. I basically assume that the body is more intelligent than me. So it's kind of like this. Even a broken down, poorly functioning liver is infinitely smarter than any doctor trained to work on the liver, which is called a hepatologist, right? Even though it doesn't even, the liver can do more, even in a broken down state, than any doctor can come in and try to replicate. We cannot do what the liver can do. We can't even pretend that we can. Very big distinction. A mechanist would say, oh, I know best. And let's use these drugs to change the numbers on the lab at any cost to the rest of your body and all these other side effects. So it kind of looks like this. Let's say it like this. Someone's lungs become full of debris. The debris could be cigarette smoke or pollen or heavy metals from air pollution or a buildup of viral particles. But the body has the same response: fever, mucus, coughing. This is a primary and the most effective way to get the debris out of your lungs. This is how we clear debris out of our systems. This is called a cell-mediated immune response. The body tries to heal itself from being poisoned by creating symptoms of a healing response, a normal reaction to debris, to poison. A vitalist would recognize this and encourage the fever, the productive mucus clearing, and coughing to expel the debris, while supporting the body in its normal primary healing response, always recognizing your body is much smarter than the smartest doctor. This is assuming also that, well, there's a root cause to the fever, the cough, and the mucus. This means that the fever, the cough, and the mucus are not the problem. The problem is the debris, right? It's the poison. It's the whatever's in there. So where did the debris come from? Are they smoking? Do they live in a moldy home? Do they work in a toxic building? Are they allergic to something in the environment? Right? Etc. This is the questions. The vitalist doesn't want to stop the cure response, especially with toxic drugs that will stop the cure and then add toxicity and poison to the body while it is already struggling. So there's one way of looking at it. A mechanist would attack the fever, the cough, and the mucus like that is the enemy and not the healing response. This is done usually with the addition of toxic drugs. The symptoms are seen as the disease or the major big problem. So once the symptoms are suppressed with toxic drugs, the job is typically complete, right? So the cause of like what caused the body to do this is never actually discovered. It's not even usually asked, or it gets kind of the same routine response of, it was an infection and we killed it. Done and done. Even though that same person will get the same bronchitis, which is mucus and, coughing and debris clearing attempt every year, maybe twice, and it gets the same treatment every time, there's no looking deeper as to why. Like, what is the debris that the lungs keep trying to clear, and where is it coming from? And how can we help the lungs become less poisoned with the debris so we can eliminate future responses like this from happening? There's a distinct difference, right, in how that's, being addressed. That's a vitalist versus a mechanist, and it takes over a big part of how you can look at this whole process and how you can, I think it's an empowering way to look at it, trying to see that the body is always doing things to help you, to serve you. The body is not ignorant, disoriented, confused, deranged, or chaotic. It is smarter than anybody's conscious brain that's coming in and trying to supersede and impose its will upon it. So to put yourself in the position of the organ or the body, if I was a heart, what would I be trying to do? If I was the lungs, why would I do that? If I was if I was an ankle and someone rolled and injured and ripped my ligaments, what would I do? I would probably swell up to bring healing nutrients, water and blood flow to bring all these healing mediations, into the area, make it hurt, to tell this person to sit the hell down so they won't walk on me and really rip me apart even more, right? What would the body do? Start thinking of it that way. I personify different parts of my body and say, okay, well, what is it trying to do? It's always trying to do the right thing. It is really smarter than anybody in a white coat trying to treat you. That's something that really should be looked into. And if you've never heard of this before, I hope you are learning about it now, right? So knowing that, right? I think there's a lot more going on than just immune system support. So, number one, I'm going to say this about the coronavirus. It's not that strong. So we should be looking at, why is a pathogen that isn't even that strong, and it's admittedly not that strong, virulent is the word, why is it taking out people so readily? Where are we in the quality of our health? Not only in America, apparently it's globally right now. What's going on that the human condition has become so low on a scale of health optimization? If health optimization is a 10, are we ranking at a 2 or a 3 or a 4? Where are we, right? And so, yes, healthier people, if you're an 8 or a 9 or a 10, you're not going to be affected by this hardly at all, because it's not that strong. If you're a 1, 2, or 3, death may be in your future. Question is, why do we have so many people hovering in the 3, 4, 5 range? Why are there so few people obtaining good health anymore? I'm going to suggest it goes much deeper and further beyond than just what you're eating. People are talking about food and supplementation like it's the end all be all right now. It is not. The only reason I suggest to any of my patients to go low carb, keto, carnivore, it's because those are highly nutrient dense, traditional, primal, ancient ways of eating that are what we would say traditional, nourishing ways of eating that give the body everything it needs, that do something about building its redox. It builds charge. It gives the body the capability to have a high electrical activity and a charge to it. All right. People who eat that way typically also respect nature, and that respecting nature increases your vitalistic way of thinking. So I think these two seem to go hand in hand. People who live a vitalistic lifestyle have a different way of thinking, a different understanding. So they make different choices based on, does this make sense to a human body? Because you're a human. You are not a robot. And the more we are doing things to alter the planet, what I'm going to refer to later is all called electrification of the earth, people are becoming more and more robotic or more artificial, more, artificial intelligence, simulated experience-wise, versus remembering what it means to be human. And the further we get away from connections to a natural nature environment, like outside, and we keep doing what we're doing to it, it's going to become harder and harder for us to remember. So I've digressed a little bit, but let's, talk about this. So, well, I don't want to go there yet. So I think there's more to talk about than vitamin C supplementation. Should we use a malaria drug? How much zinc should I be taking? Should I take elderberry or not? What about selenium? What about NAC? What about nebulizing? What about ozone? What about saunas? Blah, 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 blah. I've kind of covered a lot of this in another PDF. So when you go to that Rimka COVID-19, you can download the one PDF that kind of gives you some of these basics of like, all right, it's great. But I don't really think the point at this point, you should be thinking about, how do we kill a virus? How do we make you stronger? And why are you not as strong as you think you should be or are? Especially for those of you who feel like, well, I think I'm eating really well. I'm exercising. I'm trying to do all the right things that I think they're telling me are the right things. Am I still at risk? Why do we have 30-year-olds now getting hit really hard and they're not really looking like they should be that sick? What's going on? All right. So those are some of the things that I want to cover right now. So now that we cover, so some of these, like, what I will say, this most pressing issues, again, it's more than just this basic stuff. I don't think you should be just pounding hundreds of dollars supplements a month right now. That's not the answer. You can't keep that up, right? So here's some unspoken issues that are not getting addressed. And I'm just going to like bang through them. And if you ask for them, you're going to get this all in a PDF if you just want to read it, right? So a big one, redox potential. I'm going to define that in a little bit, but it's the charge. It's how much electrical charge your cells can hold. 2, the quality of the water inside your cells. This is critical to health. People aren't talking about this. It's called structured water or gel water or the 4th phase of water. This is the kind of stuff I teach in my master's courses and I teach to my patients, but I didn't really want to wait to tell you guys. It's like everybody needs to learn more, know more at this point. So it's important. We'll get to water a little bit more. 3, the amount of metal inside your body matters a lot right now to your immune system. Metals accumulate for a number of reasons due to high exposure, poor redox potential, poor detoxification pathways, and lack of quality sleep. For most of your detoxification naturally happens. So when I say metals, I want you to think of things like metal plates, pins, bars, etc., implanted in your body from surgical interventions. I've seen a lot of people that are not responding well, and they're patients of mine because I deal with brain injuries. They've had brain tumors, and they all have metal plates and screws in their head, and they're taking weeks and weeks, a very, very long time to get better. Okay. Metals can also be ingested or injected into you from oral, topical, and injected medications and vaccinations. Metals are also inhaled in the air. Big producers are factories and airplanes. Mercury is pumped into the air now in epic proportions today, and we inhale it. There's actually the amount of inhaled car tire, the rubber that gets burnt off just from cars, is kind of an insane, mind-blowing number. If you want to look that up, you're going to be amazed at how much we're really ingesting and how easy it is to become overloaded. Metals are also in your drinking water. And the amount of heavy metals that we are willingly embedding into our skin by the really constantly increasing popularity of permanent tattoos. I know nobody wants to hear about that, but it just is what it is. The metals making a big difference in your ability to heal, and it relates to the water. All right. 4, all of those things I just talked about, they are critical to building what's called your life force battery charge, which is your ability to create electrical energy. 5, you are an electrical being first and foremost. The quality of the water inside of you is determining how much life force is in your charge. Notice how this has nothing to do with food and supplements and da-da-da-da. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. You see that? This is not what I'm hearing being talked about as how do you build a strong immune system, okay? Also, then the chemicals, so we're very into chemistry in traditional medicine. It's like pills are chemistry. Everybody thinks, take this to kill that. Take this, take zinc, takes even functional medicine is vitamins is chemicals. Chemicals are simply the messengers from the electricity. The electricity is first, right? So they are only as good as your electrical strength. Building your redox, your charge matters more than anything. All right. The last one, the quality and, second to last, the quality and quantity of your electromagnetic soup that you live in. What is that? This is referred to as the non-native electromagnetic fields that you live in and experience. It deeply impacts the quality of your cellular water matrix, as well as then your chemical communication signals and your ability to create and sustain an electrical charge. This is what I'm talking about, like one of those invisible things that you don't even know is happening. So you think, I'm doing everything right. Why don't I still feel well? Why am I susceptible? It's because there's a very strong relationship of non-native EMF and our health. And this is why you've probably seen so much controversial discussion about 5G rollout and how it's related to the current pandemic classification. I do believe that 5G is absolutely a detrimental imposition to all of life on the planet. I've been concerned about the ramifications of the implementation of this new cellular network called the fifth generation on the biological ecosystem of human life for years now. Many of us have been concerned about it. Many of us have been talking about it. Doctors that work on this and understand this, trying to figure out it's going to happen and what's it going to look like and what are we going to do when our patients are complaining of things that are caused by this invisible kind of thing that's real. What are we going to do? So in this specific situation, dealing with, coronavirus, this has been leading to a number of deficiencies in the human body. A big one of note is nitric oxide, D3 differential, vitamin D3. I think the nitric oxide and the vitamin D differentials between people that with a low redox is so drastic. It's playing out very, very strongly in this situation. So as far as if you cared about the chemicals that I think are really important, nitric oxide and D3, and there's a number of reasons for that. But this isn't necessarily about take this vitamin, take that. It's not. I wanted you to learn a little bit about things you've never heard about. So I want to tell you a little bit about some basics, right? So what is redox potential? I've been saying this thing and you're probably like, what is that? Redox potential is the net negative charge that's developed. Every cell does it, but it's basically primarily developed in the mitochondrial colony you have, right? It varies from tissue to tissue. Mitochondria are these little bacteria that live inside all of our cells. And so that's what that means. And it varies from tissue to tissue, right? So the brain and the heart are definitely the most critical for us because this is where we have the most mitochondrial density and capacity. Why is that? It's because these two things use a lot of energy and they can never stop. They don't take a break. They've got to constantly be working big time. Okay. So if each cell, just for an example, let me tell you about redox. So these little cells, right? If each cell does not have a proper net negative charge, they can't repel each other. So a negative and a negative, they have a normal way of repelling. So they just keep a nice distance. Everybody knows how to not clump. When these cells start to lose their charge, they don't repel, they clump together. And you have a lot of things clumping, and we call that a tumor or cancer. That's what that is. This begins by each individual cell losing its ability to hold its net negative charge properly. And how that happens is inside the cell, its structured water or gel water or fourth phase of water gets destroyed. All right. This is really, really, really important in what the mitochondria do. Those little bacteria, they create what's all the ATP, which you may have heard. They're kind of like your energy packets. And they also make communication messengers that coordinate all your cellular activity and DNA activity. So this is how redox potential is codified in your mitochondrial inner membrane. And weak and unhealthy mitochondria may be the basis of all disease processes in the human body, as many researchers are now postulating. It's not the genetics myth that's still trying to be sold to you. It's nothing to do with it, right? So some basics of, let's look at this. What builds your redox? What makes it naturally stronger? Well, being young, right? The younger you are, you have a stronger redox potential, stronger electricity, better immune system than the older. That's how it is. Sunlight builds redox potential. The sun is not the boogeyman that medicine is telling you. You are making yourself sicker by avoiding the sunlight. Drinking clean, structured water builds redox potential by building healthy, structured water in your cells. Now, I've said some very specific words. What does that mean? Clean water means water without poisons added to it. Common poisons found in drinking water include arsenic, chlorine, fluoride, medications such as Prozac, birth control pills. I mean, you name statin drugs. They're ubiquitous in the water supply now. And we've also found that there's microbes of little tiny plastic beads. They're now demonstrated in all our water supply from tap to plastic bottles. So clean water in nature is always in constant motion, twirling in circles or toroids or vortices, where it picks up oxygen as well as minerals from the surrounding rocks, crystals, etc., that it flows around and through. Clean water is structured by this motion, and mineralization gets added to it from all the rocks. It's therefore in perfect harmony with the water inside our cells to create a strong electrical redox potential. Okay, you need water with like liquid metal ions, which are minerals, to create charge, right? To create electricity. Clean water does not contain poisons, but it does contain minerals, oxygen, and also this. I'm going to say this. I don't really care if it sounds weird. An energetic charge from all the life forms it connected with during its journey to reach your lips. I don't care if it sounds too esoteric. I don't care if it sounds weird, but you do need to hear that the birds, the frogs, the fish, the sun, the quartz, the silica, the boron, the zinc, the butterflies, the bees, and the mountains that, all influence the natural formation of healthy, structured water that's found bubbling from a spring, flowing down a stream, or crashing from a waterfall. Life actually infuses itself into that matrix that you get the chance to embed that same energetic matrix and charge and build your life charge by drinking it. This is not true for chemically treated tap water from your local watershed manufacturing plant. This is not true from your water in plastic bottles that have been sitting lifeless after mechanically being destroyed. I know that was a lot, but I don't know if you're hearing this or not, so I'm trying to tell you. Also, another thing, we now live in an artificial blanket of electromagnetic frequencies, waves, and radiation that we've installed into the very fabric of the earth, the skies, the orbits, and now even our purses, our pockets, our wrists, our cars, and our homes, which are extremely destructive to the redox potential and the quality of the water inside your cells. This non-native EMF lowers your redox potential, beginning by destroying the structured nature of the water in your cells. That then causes them to dehydrate, which then causes them not to be able to make a charge. Then they can't repel each other, then they clump, right? They can't make chemical messengers. You see how this is all going along now? They certainly can't coordinate an immune response. So here's the thing. Once the water inside your cells is bad, there's a reduced creation of electricity. You can't create those chemical messengers. You can't make ATP. You can't make nitric oxide. You can't make vitamin D3. You can't coordinate body functions. There's no redox potential. You have altered immune things. You have damaged hormonal systems, right? And then therefore it's an easier access to death from minor causes. So I'm going to maybe leave it at that. Well, let's say this. Let's see how much more. The action steps for like, what do you do, are in the PDF. I think you should just go to that link and get it. But let me say this. There's a few different things. What's a virus? All right, I want to say this. A virus, just so you know, is not a living organism as we define life at all. What it appears is that they're really just like simply waste products that a cell releases once it has been poisoned. Now, this may not always be the case because there's something about exosomes that cells create these little pockets of their inside materials and like release them. I just had like 300 or 400 billion exosomes injected into me about 6 weeks ago as part of a healing therapy. So we're using exosomes as therapy. But in some of those exosomes are viral pieces of communication. There's a lot of different things that the cell does in a normal manner. However, sometimes the exosomes the body is just releasing waste products. Like, this is garbage, right? We got to get rid of it. A poison cell can have so many copies of a virus that are made inside of it that eventually it just kind of explodes the cell entirely, killing it and releasing huge number of the virus waste particles, which then go to find more cells to go inside and just try to take over so they can replicate. Viruses, however, cannot take over healthy cells very easily. What you need to understand, let me see where this is. So that's a virus. What's a virus, right? It's a little protein encoded piece in our RNA or DNA. What I need you to understand is that germ theory, the idea of you catching illnesses, comes down to this thing called the germ theory. And it really is determined, like the quality of the terrain of the cell, the body, determines what a virus can do or not do, or a bacteria. Doesn't really matter. Any pathogen, any microbe, any little bug. The germ theory combines the virulence of this pathogen and the quality of the terrain of the host. This means how strong a pathogen is, like combined with the health of the person's body, determines if there's any contagious level of anything or even pathogenic. So here's a big reminder. I want you to understand there's never been a single pathogen in nature that the human body hasn't defeated. Every plague recorded in our, current history has more people never contracting it or recovering from it than have died from it. Otherwise, we would be extinct, right? So there's not a single thing that we haven't defeated. So is it really the germ, or is it the terrain? Is it the host? For me, and a vitalistic way of looking at things, the terrain is much more important than the power of the bug. You can control your terrain. You can't control the bug. And all human attempts to do so have actually led to larger responses, with things like superbugs evolving to combat our attempts to kill them. It's not going to work, right? So that's just something I want you to really think about. So what your initial body does, I want you to know, like, what is the innate immune system? The innate immune system is a fast response, because coronavirus is all about a healthy innate immune system. The innate immune system is a fast response that provides the first line of defense against something. It's your T and B cells that you hear about. It's eosinophils, monocytes, macrophages, natural killer cells, things that come in there and knock things out. It's highly related, innate immunity, to your vitamin D3 levels in your blood. I like levels to be high, like 60 to 90 is like a maintenance level for basic health for people. Low D3 will lead to a poor innate immune response. Innate immunity is best built by eating a traditional diet of nourishing foods that are naturally and easily found in the natural world, by avoiding overly processed fake foods that are never found in nature, and 3, exposing the skin to a lot of sunlight. This, again, is what is naturally found in nature. I'm actually going to put this on the screen because I think it's important. So this is what we would find in nature. Watch this. Let me do this. Nature has really the best How to Be Healthy book ever written, but nobody wants to read it at this point because we are so addicted to being comfortable that, I'm going to finish that up because I didn't get it all in, that ultimately, we believe, I'm going to type it in, that being disconnected is like normal. Like that's how perverted. So when I talked about us in terms of saying, let me type that up here for you. Oops. It doesn't want to do it for me. Hang on. I think it's important to know, right? So we've become, for a number of reasons, this blanketed electrification, this artificial way of doing things, this almost robotic, movement towards a human being, away from being a primal animal into being like a robotic creature of some sort with implanting metals and microprocessors eventually, and chips and other things that are going to start happening. And I feel like we're getting confused and we're forgetting what it's like to actually be human and knowing how to look to nature to know what to do. If it's not out in the world, you probably shouldn't be eating it. And those foods are readily, those whole foods are available in nature, like primal cultures have been eating. They build your redox charge. That water that comes from nature is naturally structured, mineralized, and charged. That's what you should be drinking. The sunlight that is there is actually doing all of those things. That's what you should be exposed to. That's where we're really at. And I didn't say, let me say what, so I talked about what builds it. What destroys the redox charge? Drinking bad water, flooding yourself in a non-native EMF environment. And 5G is this environment, but I wanted to do a little caveat about it. So let me just say a little, there's a lot of things, people saying this is a total hoax, there's no virus, there's no this. I'm not going to comment per se on that. I know there are people who are very ill, who are suffering. I have plenty of physician and nurse friends in hospital who are exhausted, getting worn out, broken down. I know friends who are losing family members. I've been taking care of COVID-19 patients myself personally. I will not disrespect them nor anyone else who is going through this by saying this is not real and people are not suffering. Absolutely will not do it. I do support the idea of doing everything you can to flatten the curve. Now, that being said, let me explain to you what 5G is doing a little bit more, just my 5G rollout explanation and how I hope we can do something to stop this. We have created an artificial soup of frequencies and none of us are escaping this now. So no matter what you're doing, it's like now what you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you think, what you do, it all matters so much more. Because I'm going to say this, we've talked about poisons and debris. Let's talk about this. We live in an electromagnetic field that allows us to communicate across the globe. I can pick this up and I can call somebody, text somebody, messenger somebody, WhatsApp, WeChat, anything, text somebody in Singapore right now, and they're going to get it in a couple seconds, almost instantly, it's going to feel like. So we can communicate across the globe in seconds through this field of electromagnetic radiation and waves. So you're being bathed in man-made radio waves, sonar waves, Wi-Fi, and on and on. This is poison. Okay? This is poison. They are artificial, radioactive frequencies. It's poisoning the water inside of you, the net charge that you therefore can hold, and they're making the human body terrain poisoned simply by living in this soup. In the last 6 months, at least 20,000 new satellites have been installed for 5G, creating a massive disruption in the normal electrical and magnetic fields of the entire planet, as well as every electrical and magnetic life form on Earth, which is every human and every animal and every plant. So the electrification of the Earth is not compatible with your health. It is destroying the structured water, which is what I talked about, inside your cells, which is destroying your electrical charge. It leads to low redox potential, low charge, and it just goes on and on, as I already discussed. So if everyone is being poisoned, right, by these artificial and dangerous frequencies that are dehydrating the cells and destroying the gel water, then it's very easy for the cells to become full of other poisons, heavy metals, and easier to break down and release lots of copies of viruses, right? Those who live in more remote areas of the world with less 5G, with less concentration of people, less Wi-Fi, less cell phones, will have a better chance of building a higher redox potential. Let me give you an example of a low redox like disaster example. Like worst case scenario is somebody who's living, let's be older, they're old, they're living in a high-rise, multi-residential building in a densely populated city with millions of people, say in a northern low light cycle latitude up north somewhere, using cell phones, laptops, Wi-Fi, smart meters, smart home devices, smart wrist devices, working in a low sedentary office environment or never doing anything at all, no exposure to sunlight or earth, drinking tap water, getting yearly vaccinations, and they're covered in tattoos. Almost the only way I'm going to make this worse is if I make that person be of a deep equatorial descent, such as transplanting a dark-skinned African, Somalian, or Kenyan to a city such as New York City or Chicago. That mismatch at that point, those things, and you add that, is so extreme that the redox potential becomes so low, even faster, almost despite anything they're going to do, because the none of it makes any sense, and the body won't be able to hold it. The cells won't be able to hold the charge in those environments, in those extreme situations. This is one of a primary reason why I will do everything I can to never be in a situation where I have to live in a multi-residential high-rise environment in a big city, especially in the north. And it's no surprise to me that some of the northern cities are getting hit the hardest, or cities that have had 5G rollout. So regardless whether it's this virus or something else, that is deeply impacting your body, your health, your immune system. And what are we going to do about it? So go to that, link. Let me get it to stop scrolling. Put it somewhere, stop scrolling. I'm learning the new system, guys. Sorry about that. Oops. Oh, gosh, I did it again. I don't know how to make it stop doing that. But if you get that information, there's a lot of action steps. And I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm going to tell you exactly what to do in that PDF about sunlight, how to use fake bulbs, how to deal with the water, what to do about it, everything you can do the best of your ability right now. And some people make bigger decisions and they move and they leave those places. One of the primary things I said to my mom, who is 74, dark-skinned Indian, living in Metro Detroit in a high-rise building, multi-residential, we got her out of there immediately. I don't love that she's there in the first place for some reasons. I love that she's there for other reasons. So there's pros and cons to the safety and health issues of her living environment that we have to assess. But being of Indian, Pakistani Bengali descent, she would be much better off further south and being in a lot more sunlight and living in a latitude that would make more sense to her body, make more sense to her mitochondria. But I can't get my mother in the sunlight to save my life. There's a lot of social conditioning about the sun, about skin color, about, there's a lot that goes into why people avoid the sun. I talked about the metal, people who are covered in tattoos. Often they don't want to go into the sun at all because you're going to ruin and fade their tattoos. So I have multiple low redox potential issues. Turns out most of the people in my practice that have a lot of tattoos have also been in either motorcycle accidents, had brain surgeries, so they've got a lot of metal in their bodies. They've had a lot of tattoos and they don't want to go in the sun because they don't want to fade their tattoos. You know how hard it is to build a redox charge? It's really hard. It's not easy to do if they don't change, right? So there's a lot that goes into trying to help somebody get to the root cause. And I hope some of this helps. Reach out to us. We'll get the PDF. And I hope it's really helpful for you. It makes you think about some things you're not thinking about. This is not about buying a bunch of supplements and just shoving them down your throat thinking that's going to protect you. It's not about throwing on some weird mask and that's going to be the cure-all. This is not about some imaginary boogeyman vaccine that's coming down the pipeline. I hope you understand that. I hope you can look deeper and hope you can get yourself well. And I'm trying to teach you how to do that from the invisible things you are not aware of. But you can start to do things to control and change your terrain and increase and improve your outcomes. All right. Thanks, guys.